Here is your latest African news. Chad, 100-stage anti-French protest in N'Djamena. Hundreds of Chadians joined anti-French protest called by the opposition coalition Mokit Tama on May 14th. Protesters opposed French military presence in the country and support for transitional President Mahamat Idriss Déby Itno, who has been in power since his father's death in 2021. The protesters reportedly attacked symbols of their former colonial power, including several Total petrol stations. The protest was mainly attended by students, with many on motorcycles and chanting "France get out." Former President Idriss Déby Itno headed an authoritarian regime for 30 years and was killed in battle on April 20, 2021, during a rebellion in the north of the country. Chadian police fired tear gas and used water cannons to disperse hundreds of protesters who took to the streets of the capital and other towns in an anti-French protest that saw the destruction of some French-linked businesses as French influence wanes in its former colonies. Recent protests in countries such as Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have seen calls for increased military ties with Russia instead of France. Nigeria. Curfew imposed in Sokoto following protest over blasphemy killing. A curfew has been declared in Nigeria's northwest city of Sokoto to quell protests demanding the release of suspects in the killing of a Christian school student, Deborah Samuel. It comes as hundreds of people in the northwestern city of Sokoto demonstrated on 14th May over the arrest of two students following the murder of a Christian student accused of blasphemy, residents said. Sokoto State Governor Aminu Tabuwal said in a statement that the curfew applies to the state capital Sokoto city. Africa's most populous country is roughly divided between Muslim and Christians, but religious tensions and deadly clashes are not uncommon, particularly in the north. Deborah Samuel, a student of Shehu Shagari College of Education, was on 12th May stoned to death and her body burnt by a mob of Muslim students of the college after she made a post on social media they deemed insulted Prophet Muhammad. Police said they made two arrests following the incident and that they had begun a manhunt for other suspects who appeared in the footage of the gruesome murder, which circulated on social media. Tanzania raises minimum wage by nearly 25%. Tanzania's president has approved a nearly 25% increase in the minimum wage amid protest about the high cost of living. The president decided on an increase of 23.3% while also increasing the salaries of government workers for the first time since 2016, her office said in a statement. The salary increment was approved considering the country's gross domestic product, domestic revenue, and developments in both the local and global economies. Tanzania's economy slowed to 4.8% in 2020, barely edging upward to 4.9% the following year, as COVID-19 travel restrictions battered the tourism sector, a key earner in the East African country. Meanwhile, the cost of fuel and food has risen as supplies have tightened following the Russian-Ukraine war. During Labor Day celebrations on May 1st, trade unions and civil servants led demonstrations in Tanzania's capital Dodoma, calling for an increase in wages, with many holding placards demanding better salaries and benefits for workers. Kenyan fighting FGM crowned world's best nurse. Anna Kabal Duba beat more than 24,000 nominees to win the Asta Guardians Global Nursing Award. The 31-year-old Kenyan nurse campaigns against early marriage and female genital mutilation. Duba has worked tirelessly in her community to empower them with education and campaign against harmful cultural practices such as female genital mutilation. Duba, selected by an eminent grand jury from 10 finalists, is the first woman graduate in her village. She has dedicated her life towards literacy and serving the masses through the Kabal Duba Foundation. Eastern Africa. South Sudan signs up for Ethiopian power supply from dam. Ethiopia has signed a memorandum of understanding with South Sudan to export hydro and other cheaper energy to Juba. According to the Ethiopian Electric Power, the power utility, Ethiopia has agreed to supply an initial 100 megawatts of electricity to South Sudan over the next 3 years. The agreement was signed last week as a South Sudanese delegation, led by Energy Minister Peter Maselo, paid a working visit to Ethiopia to finalize the memorandum of understanding. The two countries had agreed on power purchase previously. Ethiopia Electric Power Corporation Planning Executive Officer Andulem Sia told state media that Ethiopia will export 100 megawatts of electricity to South Sudan in the first phase of the 3-year period and will supply 400 megawatts of power then after. Andulem said Ethiopia is aggressively working to supply electrical power to its neighbors as part of a regional integration with its neighbors. Namibia launches a sovereign wealth fund following oil discoveries. Namibia has launched a sovereign wealth fund months after oil discoveries off its coast. At the launch in the capital Windhoek, President Hage Geingob said the Welwishia Fund will get an initial injection of $16.3 million and invest 2.5% of its portfolio locally to bridge the country's infrastructure financing gap. The fund will collect some of the royalties from all mineral resources sold as well as some tax revenues and money raised by the government, divesting from its investment holdings. Other resource-rich African countries with sovereign funds include Angola, Botswana, Libya, and Nigeria, known for its gem-quality diamonds, gold, and uranium. Namibia has considered creating a sovereign fund since 2009. The South African state is aiming to become a green hydrogen player by 2026 and has selected a preferred bidder for a multi-billion-dollar project.
Diaspora. Buffalo supermarket gunman deliberately sought African American victims. The racist white man who shot dead 10 people at a supermarket in Buffalo, New York, deliberately sought a site with a high African American population, authorities have said. The terrorist, Peyton Gendron, 18, drove more than 320 kilometers to carry out the attack, police say. The attack is being investigated as an act of racially motivated violent extremism. Buffalo Mayor Byron Brown said the suspect arrived intending to take as many black lives as possible. Questions are being asked about how he was able to carry out the attack when he was already on the radar of authorities. The gunman had previously threatened a shooting at his high school last June. A 180-page document seemingly authored by the shooter has emerged in which he describes himself as a fascist and a white supremacist. Police said the suspect had done reconnaissance of the area the day before the shooting. Meanwhile, New York's Attorney General Letitia James said her office would focus on the extremist material online. Of the 13 people shot, police said 11 were African American victims. Among those reported killed were a man buying cupcakes for his son's birthday and a woman who had gone shopping after visiting her husband at a nursing home. The gunman was arrested after the attack and has pleaded not guilty to murder charges.
Rwanda. UK to send first batch of asylum seekers to Rwanda. The United Kingdom will send the first batch of asylum seekers to Rwanda in the coming days, a month after a deal to resettle illegal migrants was signed with the East African country. Under the scheme, for which Kigali will be paid $160 million, asylum seekers arriving on small boats across the English Channel from France will immediately be transferred to Rwanda, where their paperwork will be processed. Those affected have between 7 and 14 days to file objections. The policy targets migrants who entered the country after January 1st, 2022. The deal has been subjected to intense criticism by charities, refugee rights organizations, and activists. Activists say the agreement breaches the 1951 Refugee Convention, a United Nations treaty that stipulates that signatory states must not impose penalties on asylum seekers and refugees on account of their illegal entry or stay. The United Nations High Commission for Refugees has urged the UK and Rwanda to reconsider the agreements. Both London and Kigali have defended the deal as a humane solution to global migration challenges. They also say that the arrangement is necessary to deter human trafficking. Zimbabwe. Country seeks EU backing to sell $600 million worth of ivory. Zimbabwe has recently sought the support of the European Union to sell off $600 million worth of ivory it has accumulated due to the global ban on the sale of tusks. International trade in ivory has been banned since 1989 under the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. Zimbabwe's Parks and Wildlife Management Authority Director General Fulton Mangwanya told EU ambassadors to Harare that the country has 163,000 tons of ivory and 67 tons of rhino horns in vaults, and requested the support of the EU for Zimbabwe to be allowed a once-off sale of the national ivory stock. The EU diplomats were taken on a tour of the vaults in Harare. Mangwanya said if allowed, the funds will be used to benefit local communities living around animal conservancies. The country can support up to 55,000 50,000 elephants, but the population has more than doubled to 100,000 according to officials. But the plea did not immediately garner support. 3 years ago, Botswana, Namibia, and Zimbabwe, home to the world's largest elephant population, asked for the right to sell ivory acquired through natural deaths, confiscation, and curling. But that demand was rejected by the organization meeting in Geneva in 2019.
Somalia. Ex-Somalia leader Hassan Sheikh Mohamud wins presidency. Former Somali leader Hassan Sheikh Mohamud has won the presidency for a second time in voting by parliamentarians in an airport hangar protected by blast walls from Islamic insurgents whom he must now fight for a second time. The 66-year-old, who ruled from 2012 to 2017, reversed the previous election to defeat incumbent President Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed by 214 to 110 votes in a third-round runoff, whose result was confirmed around midnight. Supporters defied a curfew to pour into the streets of Mogadishu, cheering and firing guns into the air. Born in the Hiran region of central Somalia, Mohamud has a master's degree in technical education from India's Bakatullah University. He has also co-founded the Simad University in Mogadishu.
Mali. Mali blames Western nations for a failed coup attempt. Mali has announced that security forces had thwarted a counter-coup attempt that it said was supported by an unnamed Western government. The announcement was the latest turbulent event to unfold in the West African nation, where Colonel Assimi Goïta led coups in 2020 and 2021 before becoming president. He did not name the country in question. Relations with former colonizer France have deteriorated significantly under Goïta's rule. The breakdown in relations prompted the French military to begin a withdrawal of its forces that had spent 9 years allegedly fighting Islamic extremists. Maïga said security forces had put down the coup and security was increased at checkpoints on the roads leaving the capital Bamako and at the country's border in an effort to catch accomplices. He added, recently the government also announced that it was dropping out of the 5-nation regional security force known as G5, and last month it said it was permanently suspending French media outlets Radio France International and France 24. Authorities accused RFI and France 24 of publishing false reports about abuses committed by Malian soldiers. Mali's government also accused the French army of violating the country's airspace and denounced what it said was the unauthorized use of surveillance drones. Those allegations came after France released fake videos appearing to show Russian mercenaries burying bodies near an army base which had been handed over by the French to Malian forces. Eritrea. Eritrea accuses the TPLF terrorists of planning fresh attacks against Asmara. Eritrea has accused the Tigray People's Liberation Front (TPLF) of plotting to launch attacks against the country in a bid to reclaim what the TPLF sees as lost territory. The TPLF launched multiple rockets towards the Eritrean capital Asmara in November 2020, right after it launched a surprise attack against Ethiopia's National Defense Force Northern Command. Eritrea's accusation come days as TPLF forces and Eritrean forces clashed in Badme and Ramma towns that lie along the Ethio-Eritrean border. The TPLF leadership and Eritrea have been at odds since the Ethio-Eritrean border war of 1998. The Ethiopian House of People's Representatives has labeled the TPLF as a terrorist organization. The Eritrean Ministry of Information further say the Eritrean people will fight to defend their country from any attacks. TPLF leaders have not reacted to Eritrea's fresh allegations. In 2018, longtime rivals Ethiopia and Eritrea formally restored diplomatic ties, ending 20 years of enmity, with Ethiopia accepting to obey the Commission's findings.
Uganda. Uganda set to build East Africa's first nuclear power plant. Uganda has said it has acquired land for the construction of East Africa's first nuclear power plant as the continent's top exporter of coffee beans attempts to expand its electricity generation capacity multifold. The Minister of State for Energy, Okasai Sidronius Opolot, made the announcement in a statement without identifying the site. The nation in 2017 said that it planned to build a 2,000-megawatt nuclear power plant by 2032. Uganda, which largely depends on hydroelectric power, plans to boost electricity generation capacity by almost 12-fold to 17,000 megawatts in the medium term, according to the Electricity Regulatory Authority. The International Atomic Energy Agency found that the nation is ready for building the nuclear plant. The only atomic power station in Africa is situated near Cape Town in South Africa, while Kenya and Nigeria have plans to construct nuclear power plants in the near future. Ethiopia finds forced recruitment of Tigrayan roots by the TPLF terrorists. Ethiopian leadership in the war-torn Tigray region are forcing young people to join their army's fight against the central government by threatening and jailing relatives, according to captured fighters and residents. The war in northern Ethiopia since late 2020 has killed thousands of civilians and uprooted millions, triggering famine and devastating infrastructure, though it has garnered less attention globally than other conflicts such as the war in Ukraine. The Tigray People's Liberation Front (TPLF) terrorist group says it is defending the region's 6 million people against subjugation by federal government, but Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed accuses the Tigrayan party of rebelling to try to restore its brutal grip on national government, which it dominated until his appointment in 2018. Captured fighters and aid workers have provided a picture of forced recruitment by local officials in several parts of the region. The testimony suggests many Tigrayans who volunteered earlier in the war are becoming increasingly reluctant to fight in losing a conflict following a ceasefire in March. Ethiopian government spokesman Leges Tulu said government officials had received multiple reports of forced recruitment. The pattern began late last year, according to captured Tigrayan teens who spoke in February from a hospital in the neighboring Afar, with mass arrests last month in an aggressive push to force young people to enlist.
Nigeria. A 16-year-old Nigerian wonder kid beats 49,900 contestants from 170 countries to emerge among the winners of a $2 million fund. A 16-year-old Nigerian wonder kid, Tomisin Ogunubi, has emerged as one of the winners of the global $2 million Raise initiative after beating 49,900 other applicants who applied from 170 countries across the world. Tomisin Ogunubi, who specializes in technology and coding, gained a lot of attention after she developed an app called My Locator, a software that helps lost kids find their way back home in 2016. The My Locator app uses Google Maps to track users as they move from one location to the next. Users can add numbers that will receive their location in the event of an emergency. Since the creation of the app, it has garnered over 1,000 downloads. Tomisin emerged as one of the 100 winners of the $2 million Rise Initiative Fund and will now benefit from a lifetime award, including scholarships to study abroad, mentorship, career development opportunities, and funding. Eritrea. History maker Binyam Girmay wins stage 10 at the 2022 Giro d'Italia. Binyam Girmay won stage 10 of Road Cycling 2022 Giro d'Italia on Tuesday 17th May to become the first Eritrean and black African to win a stage of the Grand Tour race. The 22-year-old, who had previously recorded 5 top 5 finishes, will not be denied in a thrilling sprint finish into Jesse as he peeped Matthew van der Poel on the line. Girmay's finish time was 4 hours 32 minutes and 7 seconds. The Eritrean rider also previously became the first African to triumph at a classic race by winning the 78th edition of the Gent Weevil game after 243 kilometers of racing. Girmay, who won silver at the last under-23 men's world road race, became the first African rider to triumph at a classic race. Somalia. President Biden reverses Trump's withdrawal of U.S. troops. U.S. officials have said that President Biden has approved the redeployment of U.S. troops in Somalia, reversing a decision by his predecessor Donald Trump. The deployment was requested by the Pentagon to support the fight against the militant group Al-Shabaab. President Trump withdrew about 700 U.S. troops from Somalia in 2020. The move to re-establish a military presence in the East African country comes as long overdue elections delivered a new president. Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, a former peace activist, recently won the election for the second time. Somalia has suffered from decades of insecurity, and the Islamist militants who once controlled the country still hold large parts of it and continue to collect taxes in most places. Many in the country expressed deep concern when former President Donald Trump ordered the withdrawal of U.S. troops who had long been relied on, as well as more than 19,000 peacekeepers from African Union nations. Al-Shabaab militants regularly carry out attacks in the capital Mogadishu, which they stepped up in the run-up to May's election in the hopes of derailing it. Africa-wide, African oil producers urge investment to boost production. Africa's main oil producers and exporters are currently meeting in Luanda, the Angolan capital. They are seeking solutions to increased investment in the oil sector and energy transition. The lack of investment in Africa's oil and gas sector over the past few years has led to a sharp decline in production. With sanctions on Russian energy, OPEC and its allies have set a target to meet a large share of the global market. In March, Angola and Nigeria accounted for almost half of the deficit in oil supply to the global market. The decision by Western countries to halt overseas fossil fuel financing has sparked alarm among Africa's largest hydrocarbon exporters. But plans are afoot to create a new Pan-African energy bank that can tackle waning oil and gas investment and drive up production across the continent.
Mali. Mali withdraws from the region French-sponsored force, the so-called G5 Sahel. Mali's military government has announced that it will quit a West African anti-jihadist force after it was blocked from assuming the presidency of the regional group. The country's departure from the G5 Sahel security force deepens its isolation after its neighbors hit it with sanctions in January over perceived foot-dragging in restoring civilian rule. Mali's diplomatic relations with Western allies, including former colonial power France, have also deteriorated recently, with Mali's military government claiming it is a victim of politicking. The G5 Sahel, which also includes Mauritania, Chad, Burkina, and Niger, launched in 2014 with an anti-jihadist force added in 2017. The group's head of state were supposed to assemble in Bamako in February to see Mali assume the G5 presidency, but nearly 4 months later, the meeting has still not taken place, according to the military government. East Africa. Uganda says it will pull out troops from DR Congo. The military in Uganda has said it will withdraw hundreds of troops it sent last year to helping neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo combat an Islamist insurgency. The Ugandan Land Forces commander Muhoozi Kainerugaba said that Operation Shujaa had only been intended to last for 6 months and would end by next month unless an extension was agreed. The authorities in DR Congo said the terms and timeline for the Ugandan withdrawal would need to be agreed by both countries. In December, Uganda sent 1,700 soldiers to take part in the joint operation with Congolese troops against rebels known as the Allied Democratic Forces. The ADF is accused of carrying out raids and massacres in eastern DR and bombings in Uganda. Opposition politicians and some commentators had strongly opposed the troops' incursion into DR Congo. This was partly because the deployment was carried out without consulting or getting approval from Parliament, as the Constitution requires. While many Congolese were desperate to see an end to ADF attacks, some do not have good memories of previous Ugandan incursions. Ugandan army has a soiled reputation for its incursions in DR Congo in the 1990s and early 2000s. In 1999 and 2000, Ugandan and Rwandan armed forces, each backing a different faction of the RCD rebel group, clashed in the Congolese city of Kisangani. The RCD was fighting to overthrow the president at the time, Laurent Kabila. In what has come to be known as the Six-Day War, over 1,000 people are said to have been killed in June 2000 as Ugandan and Rwandan forces fought to take control of the city. Ugandan troops were also accused of human rights abuses against the population during this phase of fighting. Among the claims were they sexually exploited local women. The Ugandan forces were also accused of plundering the DR Congo's vast natural resources.
South Africa. Documents prove the world's oldest person is a 128-year-old South African woman. Johanna Mazibuko is currently considered to be the world's oldest person at 128 years old. She's a South African who was born in 1894 and has lived through the times of 2 world wars, apartheid, and British colonialism. Both her birth certificate and a national ID prove that she really is as old as she says. Aside from a hearing deficiency, Mazibuko is healthy and independent enough to move around her house and even share her own life experiences. An interview with Mazibuko touches on times of her childhood that include include living on a farm, a locust infestation, raising 7 children, and living to meet 50 of her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Mazibuko has employed a personal caretaker since 2001 and lives in a caring village that reveres her for her age and wisdom. As of 2019, the average life expectancy of a human was under 73 years old. According to Our World in Data, it's not uncommon to meet people who are in their late 70s or even mid-80s, as some people can even live up to 100 years old. However, Mazibuko has clearly been highly favored and blessed. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, follow, share and like our video. It's the best way of supporting us. And remember, Africa is watching.